Hey, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Chapter 11, the quiz and the test, before we do the quiz review. So, hopefully you've noticed by now that the lessons have been recorded from last year and just reusing them. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit of the difference between what we would be doing in class versus what the Big Ideas website is going to have you do. So, let's start with that. Hopefully you've known or noticed by now that Big Ideas, right, is not, the grade you get there is not necessarily the same, so not equal to, the same grade you would get on the portal. So the reason being, Big Ideas, especially on like a quiz or a test, I would give partial credit to questions. Big Ideas does not. So things like, let's say you didn't reduce. Let's say x equaled 18 over 3, and you left it like that and you didn't reduce it. On a test or a quiz, I would take off 1 point, whereas Big Ideas would just call it wrong in general. Okay, so things like that. And then also, just if you type something in wrong, like on the last test, you had circles and it, the formula looked like this. So some people, it's very interesting, I guess the keyboard that they provide whenever you're taking the quiz or test, there's an X on it, but it's not the X that you would use on like your laptop keyboard. I don't know how to explain it. I don't necessarily know why it's different, but basically some people were using the X that the website had instead of the X on their own keyboard. And so it was marking their entire question wrong, even though every single thing matched the correct answer, except for they used the wrong X. So I had to go back through and check those. So there are various other reasons, but just remember the Big Ideas grade is not necessarily the grade you get on the portal. But please understand this, if you get a 20%, not that you would, but if you did, that won't magically become an 80%. There's no amount of partial credit or different grading that I could do to make that happen. So keep that in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is in this section, in class, we would be using a 4-function calculator. So we would have addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. We would not have a pi button. So pi, we would use 3.14. I'm sure I use that in all the videos. Hopefully that you have noticed that by now. But the Big Ideas website for homework is going to use the pi button. So the whole decimal of 3.14159265358, blah, 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 blah. It's not going to use the rounded version, which is 3.14. It does matter in the long run. Here's what I mean. Let's say you typed in the answer that the arc length was 20.20, feet, right? Let's say this is what you put in. So this is what I put in, me. And the correct answer, according to the book, was that it was 20.17 feet. A lot of people aren't good at decimals, and it's fine, whatever. But if you think of this like money, this is $20.17. This is $20.20. You were off by 3 cents. I would not mark this wrong because, again, we would be using the rounded decimal of 3.14 instead of the whole long, the pi button to be exact, if that makes sense. So if you get it wrong and you see the final answer was off by a couple decimal places, then you would get points back. Okay, so please keep that in mind. I'm going to go through. It's not going to be fun for me, but I promise I will do it for you. But keep in mind that if your answer is, 6.37 and, so this is me, But let's say the correct answer was 14.28. This is not close at all. I'm literally talking about decimal places. Okay? So keep that in mind when you're going through, and we'll go ahead and get into the quiz review. So if you notice on your quiz review, I actually gave you the answers. This is not me making a mistake. This is me trying to help you check yourself. So some people only care about getting the right answer, but the whole purpose of the correct answer is to know that you did the work correctly, to know that you did the process correct. So I want you to focus on the process. If you get to a problem and you can't figure out how the correct answer is the correct answer, come to a Zoom help class and bring the question and we can go over it together. Okay? So let's start with 11.1. It says find the indicated measure. In 11.1, we learned about arc length. We also learned about circumference, right? So I'm going to spread them out. Circumference is all the way around the circle. So the pie crust on a pizza, the tire, the black part of the tire, that would be the circumference. Your steering wheel is the circular part that you hold on to, obviously. So circumference you would find by either doing pi times the diameter or 2 times pi times the radius. This is because 2 times the radius is equivalent to the diameter. So really this is the same formula. One is using the diameter, which goes all the way across through the center, and then one is using the radius, which goes to the center, to the edge. It's half of the diameter. Then arc length, let's say, arc length was a piece of the circumference. So it would be like your individual pizza slice, your crust. So arc length, we would do arc length over the circumference. And it would equal the measure of the arc in degrees out of 360. So again, you notice that the first fraction is in length. So this would be feet, yards, inches, centimeters, stuff like that. And then the second is in degrees. And there's only one form of degrees, and it's degrees. So that being said, let's decide which one we're going to use. A radius of a circle with a circumference of 42 pi meters. So something to look at, we're looking for the radius and we're given the circumference. Some people don't know when to use this formula, but look at how much we'd be missing if we tried to use this formula for this problem. The radius, there's no real place to put in the radius, and then you're given the circumference. So you're literally only given one piece out of the 3 missing pieces in this formula. So you wouldn't use that, you would use the circumference formula. You would either use pi times d or 2 pi r. You would decide based on what you're looking for or what you're given. So here we're looking for a radius. So we're going to use circumference equals 2 pi r. So we know the circumference, right? They told us the circumference was 42 pi. So I'm going to plug it in and keep pi, and I'll show you why. I'm really not trying to rhyme. I'm so sorry. But on the right side, you see we have 2 pi r. Remember that pi is a number, so don't let it freak you out. But whenever a number, like 2x, is next to a letter, the number is multiplying by the letter. So 2 pi is multiplying times r, right? So the opposite of multiplying, because we want to get the radius by itself, the opposite of multiplying by 2 pi is dividing by 2 pi. And what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So when I do this, the pi will cancel out, and I'm left with 42 divided by 2. So that means the radius is 21 meters. And that's it. The second, find the circumference of a circle with a radius of 27 feet. So again, you can't use this second formula. You don't even have the circumference. You have a radius, and you would plug that into the circumference formula. So that's it. We're going to use the circumference formula once again. Again, we're using the radius one because we're given the radius. So circumference equals 2 times pi times the radius, which is 27. So here's how to know how to answer. Obviously, we can see they made it a decimal, but how would you know when to make it a decimal and when to leave it in terms of pi? If it says find the exact value, this means leave pi. So what that would look like if we said exact value, it doesn't, but I'm just going to show you, just to refresh your memory. You would multiply the numbers, 2 times 27, which is 54, and then you would just drop down the pi. So if it said leave an exact value, we would leave the answer like this. It doesn't, so what you're going to do is you're going to multiply. Again, I, in the videos, will use 3.14. You can do this, but your phone most likely has a pi button. If you have an iPhone or, an iPad or tablet or something like that, I'm sure Androids have something equivalent. I just don't know anything about them. But if you go to your calculator and turn it sideways, like horizontal, what do we call it, hot dog? You will see a pi button that you could use. So either way, when you do this, let me show you, let's see what our answer is if we use 3.14 times 27. So the answer I got, perfect example, the answer I got was 169.56. And then, of course, it would be in feet. So look at the ending of mine, 0.56, and theirs is 0.6. So I'm off by literally 4 cents. So everything else looks good. This is 11.1. Again, I'm not going to do all these questions. If you have one that you would like to go over together, come to Zoom and bring that question. All right, this next one, I believe it says find the perimeter. I don't have the directions, but that's what we are going to do. So perimeter is the length all the way around an object. A circle's perimeter is called the circumference. Okay, so some of this will be obvious, like the length of this is 6. The length of this is 28. The length of this is 6. The length of this is 28. However, you'll notice that we have 4 circles, right? We have a piece of each of those circles. Each of these circles are congruent. You can tell, other than just your eyes, they will have the same radius. So it might take you a minute to look at this to figure out what the radius is, because in order to find the circumference of a circle, or the perimeter of a circle, you have to find the circumference. So circumference is either pi times d or 2 pi r. So you would need to look for either the circumference or the diameter. So at first, it's really, if you don't know what to look for, or probably, maybe you'll find it. But this is the radius, this is the radius, this is the radius. So you need to compare the radius over here. Since these are 2 congruent circles, their radii are going to be the same. And if you notice, all the way from here to here is 6. So if their radii are congruent, that means this radius is 3 and this radius is also 3. So we're going to use this to find the circumference of this piece. So circumference will equal 2 pi r, because again we have the radius, so we're going to use 2 pi r. So circumference equals 2 pi times 3. Again, I'm going to use the 3.14 just to kind of show you. So I get 18.84. But if you notice, it's only a quarter of the circle. So you're going to divide that by 4. So divide by 4. 4.71, which means this one is also 4.71, which means this one's also 4.71, and 4.71. To find the circumference, you're going to add. So I'm just going to start in this corner. 4.71 plus 6. Oop. Line up your decimal, y'all. 6 is a whole number, so you can put 6.0 if you want. Plus 4.71 plus 28. Again, 0.0. But you're using a calculator, so it should be pretty easy. Plus 4.71, running out of room. There are ways to make this go quicker, but remember that I teach to the least mathematically minded in the room. Almost done, 4.71, and then 28. If you notice, a way to kind of help me keep track of what I did highlight as I went. Again, there are easier ways you can do things in your head. Like, 6 and 6 would have made 12. 28 and 28 would have made 48. Like, you could have added those and then written them. But again, some people only look at what I do and they don't listen to what I do. So I wrote it all out. I've got all of my 4.71s. I've got all the sides. Anyways, add them all together, and we get 78.84, and it's inches. This next section, I'm going to do number 7. I know this video is already long already, so it says find the arc length. We're going to use that arc length formula. So arc length over the circumference, I'm going to write circ, equals the measure of the arc out of 360. So do we know the arc length? It's asking us to find the arc length of AB. So do we know it? No, that's what's missing. So you could put X, you could put A, you could put L, whatever you want. And then it asks for the circumference on the bottom. So the circumference, we need to see, do we have the diameter or the radius? We have a radius, so we're going to use the 2 pi r formula. So 2 pi times 18. Again, this might change based on if you use the rounded version or if you use the pi button. I'm using the rounded version, so 2 times 3.14 times 18. And I got 113.04. And it will equal the measure of the arc. So in degrees, the measure of the arc is the same as its angle, the central angle. So 150, and then 360 will never change. You can cross multiply. I think I do that in a couple videos. Or you can know x is on the top and 113 is on the bottom. X is being divided by 113, so the opposite of dividing by 113 is multiplying by 113.04 on both sides. So I got 47.1, and it would be inches. So I got the exact answer that they did. Perfect. The next, converting from degrees to radians and radians into degrees. So the main thing you want to remember is that radians, you want pi in the answer, and then degrees you don't. So we're going to look, the reason I say that, you should remember from the videos, you either multiply by pi over 180 or 180 over pi. Whenever you get to Algebra 2, you're going to learn about the unit circle. And these two are equivalent to each other. 180 is pi in degrees. Pi is 180 in radians. It's the same thing. So that's why we're able to do this. So we would take 60 degrees, and we want to go into radians. So what you want to know is, I want radians to have pi in the answer. And when you have pi in the answer, it's in the numerator. So I want to multiply with pi in the numerator and 180 in the denominator. You can cancel if you want to. I'm just going to multiply straight across. I get 60 pi over 180. And then you definitely want to reduce. So 60 goes into 180 3 times. So pi over 3 would be your final answer. Not 1 pi, just pi. So again, just like we don't write 1x, you don't write 1 pi, you just write pi. The second one, we want to go into 5 pi over 4, into degrees. So whenever we want to answer in degrees, we don't want pi in the answer. The only way to get rid of pi is to cross cancel it. So put pi on the bottom so you can cross cancel. Again, you can cross cancel if you want to, or you can multiply straight across. If I multiply straight across, I get 900 over 4, which reduces to 225 degrees. These you should get the exact answers. There is no, because you're not physically multiplying by 3.14 or the pi button. So no decimals unless, heaven forbid, something like this didn't become a whole number. 11.2, we learned about area. So area is, what's the best way to pick this? Obviously pizza, but it's the cheese on a pizza. There's only one area formula and there's no other. So area equals pi r squared. And then we learned about sectors. So again, this would be your personal part of the pizza, but your cheese, your toppings, things like that. So the sector formula was very similar to the arc length. It would be the area of the sector. So the area of the small piece over the whole area of the circle. And it would equal the measure of the arc out of 360. So in these examples, we're just going to do number 1. Again, save some time. Area of the circle with a radius of 6.8 feet. So students, again, get confused which one they should use. Now we're going to do number 2. Area of the circle with a diameter of 19.2 centimeters. So we're finding the area given the diameter. So if we were to try to use the sector formula, we don't see the word sector, so you're not going to use the sector formula. So we're going to use the area formula. So we know area will equal pi times the radius squared. They did not give us the radius, they gave us the diameter. You can't just plug in the diameter. What you need to remember is that the diameter is 2 times the radius, and the radius is half the diameter. So to find the radius, we're going to split the diameter in half. So take 19.2 and divide by 2, and it's 9.6. So when we go to plug it in for the radius. So I am again going to use the for function. So common mistake, you need to square first. So you would do 9.6 squared, or 9.9. Oh my lord. 9.6 times 9.6, which is 92.16. And then I'm going to multiply by 3.14. So area equals 289.38. So centimeters squared, because it is area. So if you notice, we got 289 and 289. Our decimals are off by about 15 hundredths. So that would be like 15 cents out of a dollar. This is okay, because remember that we squared and then we multiplied a squared number by 3.14. So we're going to be off by, the decimal will be off by a little bit, a couple digits. I'm only going to do one of these. Again, it just takes a while to explain it all. It says find the areas of the sectors. So you see that word. So we're going to use that formula, area of the sector over the area of the circle. And it will equal the measure of the arc out of 360. So it says find the measure of the sectors formed by JLK. So there are two sectors. There is the Pac-Man looking sector, right? The one I just highlighted in yellow. And then there's the smaller sector. So you're going to be asked to find both. Most people their first instinct would be to find what I've highlighted in green because it gave you the measure of the arc, which is fine, but you're still going to be asked to find the measure of, or the area of the yellow. But first, we're going to do the green, so I'm just going to write green for, just because. We're going to find the area of the sector. We don't know it. That's literally our purpose, so that's the part we don't know. X, area of the sector. The area of the circle we don't know, but we can know. We know the area is pi r squared. So we need to look for the radius. From center to edge, that's 7. So pi times 7 squared. So pi times 49. Which is 153.86. Find the measure of the arc. Again, we're doing the green, so the arc is 50 degrees out of 360. So x is on the top. The unknown, or x is on the top. It's being divided by 153.86, so we're going to multiply. So we got 21.37, and then this would be in feet squared. So that's the area of the green. Now we're going to find the area of the yellow. But I'm not going to color in yellow because ain't nobody has eyes for that. I'm going to color it in red. And find the area of the red. So same formula, we don't know the area of the sector, so I'm going to put X. The area of the circle, it's the same circle, so it's going to have the same area of 153.86, right? Yep. And then the measure of the arc will be different. So it is all of the circle except for 50 degrees. Remember that a circle is 360, so 50 degrees takes up one portion. That means our remaining portion will be 310 degrees out of 360. We do the same thing, multiply by 153.86. And then we get 132.49 feet squared. So some things need to make sense. The red is a much bigger area, so it needs to be a much larger number. $132.49 is much larger than 21.37. So it needs to make sense. And then this is the area of the sector. I promise we just got 2 more questions to do, or 2 more concepts. I'm going to do number 13. You will need to find the area of a region like this. So the best way to do this is it's already split up into 2 shapes. You got a triangle, and then you have half of a circle, right? We would call that a semicircle. So let's find the area of the triangle first. Area is 1/2 base times the height. I'm sure I've mentioned it, but your hypotenuse is never the base or the height. So you're not going to like it, but we're going to have to find ours. This is a right triangle. So how do you find the missing side on a right triangle? The Pythagorean theorem. We're missing a leg. We're missing this leg. The other leg is 8. So 8. And then the hypotenuse is 17. Do your math. I'm trying to save us a little bit of time. We will get 15. Okay. So, that being said, we're going to find the area. So again, 17 really means nothing to us. We're going to use 15 as the base, so times 15, and then times the height. The height of the triangle is 8. It doesn't really matter what order you multiply in. I'm going to do 1/2 of 8, which is 4, times 15, which is 60. So I know the area of this piece is 60. 60. So I need to find the area of the semicircle. It's half of a circle. So we're going to find the area of the circle and then split it in half. So area is pi r squared. So I'll move this over. The radius, they didn't give us the radius, they gave us the diameter. Because remember, radius is only from the center to the edge. They gave us the diameter. The diameter is double the radius. So my radius is 4. Whoop. Common mistake, 4 squared does not equal 4 times 2. So some people are like, oh, I'm just going to plug in the diameter anyways. 4 squared is 16. It is not 8. Please don't be that person. It's so sad. So we're going to do pi times 4 squared, which is 16. And then 3.14 times 16 is 50.24. So what we're going to do, I know that that is the whole circle's area. I need half of that. So I'm going to half it, which is 25.12. Then I'm going to add 25.12 plus 60. Sorry, everything is everywhere. But when you do that, 60 plus 25.12 is 85.12 feet squared. So if you notice, again, we use the rounded version of pi, so we are off by 1/10, so 1 penny. Okay. Then 11.4 review. Tell whether the solid is a polyhedron. If so, name the polyhedron. So polyhedrons, all you're looking for is that it has no curve. It's made up of polygons, and polygons have no curve. So, number 1, yes, it is a polyhedron. And then name the polyhedron. First off, it is a prism. Okay, because you can be divided into prism or pyramid. It is a prism, and then you need to look at the base. There are a couple bases here. It doesn't really matter. If you called the bottom the base, it is a rectangle. If you called the side the base, it is a rectangle. If you called the front the base, it is still a rectangle. So it is a rectangular prism. So again, all polyhedrons are either prisms or pyramids. Those are the options. Number 2, it doesn't have any curve, so it is a polyhedron. It is a prism or a pyramid. It is a pyramid. To tell what kind, you need to look at the point where all of it comes together. Look directly across from it. So most of the time it's on the bottom. Sometimes it won't be. What shape that is? It is a triangle, so it is a triangular pyramid. Number 3 has a curve, so it is not a polyhedron. Then the last, describe the cross-section formed by the plane and the solid. It's literally just asking where they intersect. What shape does it make? This makes a circle. This one makes a triangle. And then this one is trying to trick you. It's not a rhombus. It's a parallelogram. A rhombus has all congruent sides. So this side is definitely not congruent to this one. Just saying. Sorry this video is so long. I tried to make sure we covered everything. Please come to Zoom and bring a question if you have one.